Welcome to What We Think, brought to you by Marts&Lundy. Marts&Lundy is a strategic consulting firm committed to advancing the field of philanthropy. We help mission-driven organizations build the capacity they need to achieve their highest potential. In this podcast series, our experienced consultants and special guests will share insights on current opportunities, trends, and challenges in philanthropy.
Welcome, everyone, to this Marts&Lundy podcast. I'm Sarah Cave, a consultant based in Atlanta, Georgia. And today we are going to have a discussion with Jenifer Standish of Heritage Hall School in Oklahoma City, a school that received what could have been bad news about a potential campaign, but managed to take that opportunity to turn their fundraising operation up. Welcome, Jenifer.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today. Hello from Oklahoma.
We're so glad to have you. Audience, I am going to tell you about Jenifer Standish. She has been working at Heritage Hall for several years, but her background was actually in marketing and sales. She had never done development work before accepting this role. She had served a few years in special events. She has 2 kids at Heritage Hall, and it makes her very passionate about the work she does. And she manages a staff of 4, which includes 2 frontline fundraisers. So let's talk about our work together. Heritage Hall hired Marts&Lundy to conduct an assessment of your development operation, design a case statement, and conduct a feasibility study. I think it might be valuable for our listeners to hear your thoughts about the overall process.
Thoughts about the overall process is a great question. I couldn't say enough good things about the overall process. I don't think we knew what to expect. I think sometimes when you have a consultant coming in, it can be daunting because you could end up with someone who gives you a whole lot of other things to do on an already full plate, or another boss that you report to. I think some of our team members were a little afraid of, but that is not at all what happened. I think our development department was the one who really pushed for this process. So we were the ones who wanted it, which is nice, because we were the ones requesting help. We knew we needed guidance. We had high expectations from our board. We had been in a campaign process for quite a while, even before I came into this role. So we came into a position that was, already a difficult one. So, I think we were very well surprised, though, by how the process went. I think we worked with you, Sarah, for about a year, and in total for everything we needed, but you provided much more than we thought that we would ever need, and we are in a really good position now.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, but I have to cast your mind back, because at the end of our study, I had the very unhappy task of telling you that Heritage Hall wasn't ready for a campaign at that time. The school was celebrating its 50th anniversary, but for many of those 50 years, fundraising had been reliant upon a single generous donor. What we call, as consultants, the culture of philanthropy was just beginning to grow under your direction. So when you received my report, how did it make you feel?
Well, I don't think that I was entirely surprised. I think sometimes it's hard to hear no, but we really wanted to take that as a not right now. Like you said, we were relatively, a newer development department. We had been heavily reliant on one donor for a long time. The 2 people that were in my role were here. They were each here 2 years before I started in the development director role. And it's just really hard to establish a good game plan for development with that background. We really just needed to increase our engagement. And you taught us so much about that. You have a strategic plan once every 5 years in an independent school, and our lower school campaign had been on that strategic plan 2 times. So we just knew that we needed to make some major changes. And, I have to say, even though the answer was no, what I was surprised by pleasantly was that you left us with 26 recommendations, even though the answer was no, not right now, as I like to call it. You left us with 26 recommendations for our development department that really outlined our plan for how to get to a yes. And that was extremely helpful. If I even broke that down further, those 26 recommendations for us in the development department were really categorized into 5 categories. It was what we needed to do in the short term, what we needed to do in the long term, some definite opportunities we have with our alumni, things we needed to do in our database, and then, engagement and stewardship. So the original question was, how did we feel? Surprised, but not, nothing that we didn't expect as a development department. I mean, I think that it seems very easy to raise a lot of money, especially when you're in an independent school or a private school and you have some, affluent people and donors. It's very hard to understand, well, why can't you just go, why can't you just go get that 20 million? It can't be that hard, but it actually really is difficult whenever you're trying to preserve those relationships. So we had a really great plan for how to go about it.
Well, thank you. I also have to say, I was very impressed with the way that your board took this news. It is not often that a board can hear things like that and decide not to put their feet in the ground and automatically, I don't care what you said, we're going to go move forward with this anyway. But your board chair in particular had a very good understanding about those recommendations and what needed to be done. So I'd love for you to talk about what did happen with your board and with your office in the aftermath of this report.
So with our board, I do think that there were obviously some mixed feelings whenever the news was delivered, but overall, everybody was really great about it. I think specifically what really helped is we had a board training immediately after, after you delivered the news that it was a not right now. So I think that really helped. I mean, significantly. You came in, I think we delivered the news in maybe May or June, and immediately you came in that August for the board retreat, and you did a board training that, I mean, I can attribute that one training to thousands of dollars of difference, not just in an immediate increase in annual fund giving, but because our board needs to lead the charge on a campaign. I think they came out of that training fully understanding what their role was going to be in the campaign. And you could see that immediately in pledges and just engagement with our board and willingness to help. And, them coming to me and saying, how can I help? What we even had another training that was like how to tell Heritage Hall's story, how to tell your story, and how to tell Heritage Hall's story. So, I think that absolutely helped. And everyone needs training all the time. We do as development people, our board members do. In any job, you always want to refresh your training. And I think that was a significant difference immediately. And also, sometimes boards just need to hear the news from a professional, from someone who is a consultant and does this on a day-to-day basis. That when I came into this, you had talked about my sales and marketing background, but we as a development department were asking for help. And what I really appreciated from our board is that we asked for more after that. We said, we want Sarah to stay on. We've got some processes that we really need to tighten up. There's so many things that we want to do. And we even asked for more time with you, and they granted that to us. And so I feel like they were incredibly supportive.
They were. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to get to work with you in that moment. So I think that's something maybe our listeners aren't aware of. We could still do some really good work, even though we weren't headed into a campaign. So based on the recommendations, based on the time that I spent there, I'd love to hear you tell people anything that you remember from that 9 months of work.
Well, that was a wonderful period of my life. I look back on it so fondly. We could access you anytime. You were never far away. I could call you any time of the day. I could email you, but we set up specific visit times. And I think that was so important for you, to be on campus. I remember peppering you with questions. I mean, rapid fire. We had a notebook just dedicated to questions that we would want to ask you. And our development department would meet every Monday and we would say, hey, don't forget, your questions for Sarah. And then when you would come, everybody in our department, including, our database manager, our director of alumni affairs, our annual fund director, they all had their individual time with you. And that was really needed because everybody was working on different things and everyone has questions. When do you not have a question for a professional? When can you not talk about best practices? And you not only helped us with that, but you had specific examples. I mean, you had charts and graphs and examples of what, was working successfully at other places. And you would, it wasn't just like, tell us about it. You would go, here is the chart, here's your annual fund chart. And now we're going to do this for 5 years. I mean, so it was real life examples. It was a partnership. It was like having another member of the team.
Well, I loved being part of that team.
And we loved having you, and we still do.
So we're now getting to really the meat of our discussion. As we worked together, as we uncovered this wealth of information and we started putting these recommendations into place, how did you utilize this new information and the operations plan? In which areas did you see success?
I would say, just looking at the last few years of our success, I would say probably where we've seen the most success is in participation, which I would say we just grew from engagement, which was really important to us. I think we're going to come back to that word so many times because that's really, a lot of what we focused on. We had 2 separate participation drives, highly segmented, led by volunteers. We created an annual fund cabinet, and they really led those participation drives for our alumni and also our current patrons. I think another recommendation was asking for specific amounts. We had consecutive year donors, but we had never asked for a specific amount. And, they might've been giving to our annual fund for 10 years and it was the same amount all the way across the board. So that really helped us by asking them just to increase that a little bit. Every year on our salaries, we're probably getting a cost of living increase. So it makes sense to try to kind of, increase our giving as our income increases. So that was very successful for us. Obviously we focused on retention, acquisition, reacquisition, and growth. We also added buckets to our annual fund, which was highly successful for us. And one of your recommendations, I think donors are so savvy and they want to have options. We have so many causes that we can support. Also younger donors, they really want to know exactly what those funds are going for and they want a choice. It makes a difference. They want more information sometimes than our older donors may. And so we added buckets under our annual fund. We let our donors choose from faculty professional development, academic programs, area of greatest need, campus and facilities, and financial aid. And what we found was 90% of our donors trusted us and they would still say, they would check the box for area of greatest need, which, as you know, we want unrestricted giving in annual fund. And so it worked out perfectly by just adding those options and choices for them. So I think that really helped. I think we took a really big look at where we were spending our time because you helped us with and I think this is the biggest thing. Honestly, the biggest thing is we worked on the development calendar for the year, which is everyone. It was what I was doing, what the annual fund director was doing, what we're doing in alumni affairs, and what we're doing with our database. So I think that just having that calendar and breaking that down by month and everything that's going on with that month, we didn't have that before. And we refer to that every week. I just provided it to our new alumni director and she said, oh, I mean, okay, this is a relief. I feel like I know now, what is coming up and what is coming up, what is in the past, what we can focus on. And we really have a template that we just redo from year to year. And if we add something on, we add it to the calendar. And if we think something's not working, we remove it. But it's a breath of fresh air to be able to look at that and just have a process and be able to see the entire year. And I'll tell you that our leadership loved it. I mean, they love to know what we're doing. So that was very nice to be able to provide that to them and get their input.
Well, there you were, cruising right along, and the world shut down. So one of the things I remember being really excited about hearing was that you had focused on a early in the fiscal year push for your annual fund, so that you were actually almost already at your goal when everybody had to suddenly go home. I'd love to hear more about what you did during COVID and then how you continued those efforts into the next fiscal year.
Well, I remember it being spring break, and it was immediately after spring break. That is when we heard the news about COVID, and we as a school did not return for the rest of that year. So we were working from home. Our kids were at home. We went to online learning immediately. So, a lot of us as parents, me included, were trying to be teachers as well as continue, in our own roles. And I am not a good teacher, by the way. And this actually, COVID might have been the best thing that could have ever happened to patrons and donors, because I'm telling you what, there is not enough money in the world to pay these teachers on a daily basis. I can't imagine teaching a class of, 16 to 20, much less, I was just dealing with my 2, and it was so difficult. So, as far as development wise, we did a lot of checking in on people. We were very successful. Like you said, we had moved our annual fund drive to the very beginning of the year so that, annual fund was first. So we were not really worried about our annual fund that year. And we continued just checking in on our donors for the rest of the year. The next year, we were fortunate because we did return to in-person learning. And I think we like to call that the annual fund conundrum, because we had the biggest annual fund we have ever had that year. And I think that is due to a lot of things. But I know our donors were very happy to be back on campus. I know that they found out firsthand what it was like to teach the children themselves, and, just appreciate everything we were doing as a school. And so, they were more than willing to support, everything that we were doing. And I think just trying to increase that engagement and stay in touch with everyone and see how it was going. Everyone in our department was making calls. How are you doing? What do you need? I mean, we were dropping off reams of paper to people that were, having to print lots of things for lower school. It's a lot of printing is what we found out in the lower school. So, I mean, we literally were dropping off things to people's homes and just making sure that they were doing okay. And I do think we reaped the reward of that the next year.
Absolutely. And then just to add a little extra excitement, Heritage Hall also had a leadership transition last year. And I would love for you to talk about how you were able to capitalize on honoring your previous head of school while you were welcoming the new principal, especially in terms of fundraising.
Sure. Our previous head of school, Guy Bramble, was here for 33 years, and that's an extremely long time for someone to be out of school and be a head of school. And he was highly regarded. A lot of the alumni knew him. A lot of patrons knew him. He also taught English and language arts classes. So he had a lot of students that had went through his classes. We wanted to honor him, and also at the same time welcome in our new president. So, and I think that went really well. We did have a big retirement party for him that was well attended, and also our new president was there. We also have an alumni tour that we do because we have alumni all over the nation, and we actually visited 3 other cities, because sometimes it's hard when your alumni are far away for them to get back to your school for events. Mm-hmm. So we went to 3 other cities, and Guy came along, and it was, and we utilized that. We said, come say goodbye to Guy, and we had great turnout in all of those cities. And it was really appreciated. I think a lot of what we do with our donors, we really want to know what they're passionate about. And Guy's passion, is excellence in leadership and service. And so we were able to fund an endowment. We asked him what he, would like the fundraising to go toward. And he wanted it to be an Excellence in Leadership and Service Award, one for a faculty member and one for a senior. And so we were able to successfully fund an endowment with the funds that we raised upon him retiring. So Mr. Fetro, who is our president now, when he came in, I love the relationship that he and Guy had. I mean, the camaraderie that they have is wonderful. I mean, they are partners in Guy leaving and Mr. Fetro coming on as our president. They worked well together. They would both come on the tour. They would show up together at all events, introduce one another, and genuinely had a friendship. And I think that people really enjoyed seeing that because it's very refreshing. It's also soothing to know that even though our head of school for 33 years is going out, we are still going to be able to have him on board to answer questions. And you will actually see him on campus still to this day, frequently, being called into someone's office to ask questions, or he may just miss us and want to, come through the administration building, but they worked very well together in that transition. And it was really nice to see.
So you've touched on a few things, but I'd love to know what you think are the biggest factors in the success of your current fundraising efforts.
The biggest factors in the success of our fundraising efforts would definitely be in increasing our engagement in volunteers. Just knowing that everyone on campus is a fundraiser and a steward for Heritage Hall has been important. And we've been trying to share that message in so many different ways. And that has really helped. I think extreme organization and processes, because we needed that, has really helped. I think working with a great team that's been on board for every harebrained idea that we, have had. I think being willing to step outside the comfort zone and try new things. We've realized that in a small shop, we cannot do everything. So, we've utilized some other software for planned giving, crowdfunding, things like that. So I think that we've been working with a really great team and supportive leadership that let us try new things, and take some evaluated risks.
So what do you think a feasibility would show you now?
That is a great question. A feasibility study is very labor intensive. I think people don't realize you provided us with a lot of things. I mean, you had someone else come in and do a trends analysis for us. You provided us with a professional writer. In our feasibility study, that's where we found out that we would have a rhombus of donors. A lot of schools have this triangle where they have major donors at the top and there's only a few. And then, in the middle of that triangle, they will have $250,000 to $500,000 donors. And then and it works its way down on the amount that people can give. So we uniquely found out in our trends analysis that we would have a rhombus of donors, which would be a lot of donors that could do, $250,000 to $500,000. So we knew we were going to need to increase engagement, meet with a lot more people. It truly is a numbers game. We were going to need to get in front of a lot of donors, because we didn't have those major donors that we thought we might have. So, what would a feasibility study show now? It's going to show that same thing. I mean, it's going to show where we are in our rhombus of donors, that engagement is incredibly important and that we need to, continue to engage the donors that we have and also new donors. So I think we're in a much better place though now, because we're meeting with so many more people and we have so many people involved in the process. It's not just the development department. It's our leadership on campus. It's our faculty. It's our volunteers. It's everyone. So I think we're really increasing those numbers. So I think that we're in a much better place, and we have bigger plans. So I hope if we had a feasibility study now, it would be much different in one way, because we are engaging so much more. But as far as the amount that people could give, I don't believe that would change. But I would like to think that we would be successful this time.
I would venture to say that you would be, because I think what you have done with all of this engagement is take people with capacity and increase their understanding and their willingness to be a part of Heritage Hall. So we've moved from the single donor mindset to the everyone is responsible for the success mindset. So I think it's wonderful. As we wrap up, is there any advice that you would give to our listeners?
I would just advise anyone in development to be passionate about what they do and be able to tell the story. Relationships over everything. Care about your donors. Donors are savvy. They know when we're being authentic. And I think a successful relationship between donors and anywhere you're working is just aligning what donors care about. And we can do that by knowing them, getting to know them and finding out what they're passionate about, and then aligning that with your school's needs. And I think when you do that successfully, everybody comes away from that process feeling really great about what has happened. And I think that is really an indicator of success in the development world. I truly believe in feasibility studies and processes. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of great people out there like you, Sarah, and Marts&Lundy, that can really be a resource and a shoulder to cry on, even if you need one. So, and I would just really believe in the feasibility study process.
Thank you. So these are my takeaways from today. Many hands make light work. And when you engage your volunteers in development efforts, you can and will increase their inclination to give. I think, as you know, plans and processes are awesome and I love them, but so are new and innovative ideas. The ability to have a structure and then be nimble, address what's working and what isn't, that's the key to success. And finally, as we often say about donors, and as you have said at least twice today, no doesn't always mean no. It just means not now. So you can take that campaign no and turn it into a fundraising yes. With that, we will sign off. I want to thank you so much, Jenifer, for taking this time to share your thoughts and experiences.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always good to see your face and hear your voice. And this has really been fun.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners. We certainly hope you enjoyed this episode.
We thank you for listening and invite you to visit our What We Think page at martsandlundy.com. Here you will find blogs, webinars, and special reports with more of our insights.